Some of the tales behind the Hollywood glamour are more compelling than the screenplays. We're delving into the fiery rivalry between Nancy Culp, Buddy Ebsen's co-star, and the endearing Beverly Hillbillies star today. Although Ebsen became well known because to his charm on screen, problems off-screen developed that would permanently damage their relationship. What could cause two adored celebrities to become so hostile toward one another? The hidden truth, which includes interpersonal conflicts and drama behind the scenes, is startling and engrossing. Hold on tight, everything is altered by this tale. Nancy Culp is an actress. Nancy wasn't your average movie star. She was raised as Robert and Marjorie Culp's only child, and was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Her mother juggled the duties of teaching before becoming a school principal, while her father, a traveling salesman, was frequently absent. Nancy's extraordinary journey began with this orderly, controlled childhood. When her family relocated to Miami, a city full with opportunities that would soon reshape her life, a new chapter started. By 1943, Nancy had earned a journalism degree, which was remarkable for a woman in her day. She appeared destined for a peaceful life behind the pen. Nancy, however, wasn't one to stick to a formula. She became a journalist for the Miami Beach Tropics, where she covered more than just local news. She was interacting with foreign leaders like the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, and interviewing movie stars like Clark Gable. These weren't little accomplishments. Her drive and resolve were evident. They were significant events for a motivated up-and-coming star. Everything changed when World War II broke out. Nancy was unflinching. She heeded the urge to serve, putting aside her professional goals. Joining the United States, she defied expectations by moving up the ranks to become a lieutenant in the Naval Reserve. Consider the determination of a young lady in uniform, demonstrating her abilities at one of the most trying times in history. But why would such a successful, driven lady have such a strong dislike for Buddy Ebsen? What transpired between them that caused such a deep rift? The shocking answers could be revealed by Buddy Ebsen's narrative when we shift our focus to him. Keep your eyes on it. This is only the beginning of the mystery. The early career of Buddy Ebsen. Nancy's trip and Buddy Ebsen's couldn't have been more unlike. Buddy, who was born in 1908 in Orlando, Florida, dreamed of becoming a dancer, a passion that he and his sister Vilma also shared. Together they were referred to as the baby of stairs on the vaudeville circuit, where audiences were enthralled by Buddy's innate charm and stage presence. His career in the performing industry was assured due to his indisputable skill. However, Buddy's journey wasn't entirely glamorous. Buddy's journey to New York wasn't without its setbacks. He realized that he would need to work hard to make ends meet because he had hardly enough money for a supper. He was a combatant, not simply another wannabe entertainer. When Broadway called, his efforts paid off, and Hollywood soon followed. Buddy was dancing with celebrities like Shirley Temple by the late 1930s, and he soon established himself as a popular performer in Hollywood musicals. However, his tale was far from over. The worst and the greatest were actually still to come. When Buddy was chosen to play the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz in 1939, his career appeared to take a dramatic turn. However, what appeared to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity became a nightmare. He almost lost his life as a result of the makeup's harmful effects, which were caused by aluminum dust. After Buddy was admitted to the hospital, the part was recast. Despite the severe setback, Buddy refused to quit up. He changed course, taking on new endeavors such as instructing military personnel in sailing during World War II and investigating alternative professional options, all the while retaining his easygoing, amiable manner in spite of the difficulties. Although his life had its share of unexpected turns, he consistently continued to go forward, demonstrating his perseverance. Even if his journey wasn't without difficulties, his capacity for adaptation allowed him to be active in the field in the years that followed. However, what may have caused Buddy Ebsen, a guy who persevered through a lot of hardships, to argue with Nancy, a strong woman who made her own way in the world? Despite the obstacles in their way, how did these two extremely different people end up together? Join us as we explore Buddy and Nancy's fascinating bond and the start of a journey together. Imagine two people, each with their own peculiarities, and from quite different backgrounds, skills and aspirations, making a name for themselves in 1950s Hollywood, which was undergoing rapid change. With her keen looks and direct manner, Nancy Culp had a somewhat unusual career path from the beginning. Following a brief marriage to Charles Malcolm Dacquis, she relocated to Hollywood and found work in MGM's publicity division. A filmmaker was drawn to her humor and intellect, and saw her unquestionable cinematic potential. Nancy soon began appearing in well-known television programs, such as Maverick, in which she played a brassy inebriated waitress, and I Love Lucy, in which she played a maid. Nancy had a special talent for shining in even the tiniest roles, even though these weren't main ones. Her strong attitude and sharp wit won her over audiences. Conversely, Buddy Ebsen's career path was based on his sympathetic on-screen persona and folksy charm. Known for his kind and grounded demeanor, he soon established himself as a television mainstay by portraying characters that viewers found relatable. Buddy had established a solid reputation as a reliable actor by the late 1950s, both on and off film. Because he was prepared to try new things, he played a variety of characters in series like Gunsmoke and Maverick, from charming heroes to evil villains. However, underneath his laid-back exterior was a guy with conventional ideals who was often viewed as archaic, quickly changing industry. Nancy and Buddy found themselves drawn to the same circles by Hollywood's close-knit television world, as the 1950s gave way to the early 1960s. Their careers were being shaped by their shared drive for achievement, even if their paths had not yet directly intersected. Unafraid to defy expectations, Nancy embraced her unique appearance and attitude to create characters that audiences found distinctive and endearing. She disregarded Hollywood's norms, transforming what some could consider her shortcomings into indisputable advantages. Buddy, meanwhile, was able to switch between genres because of his adaptability. His performances, whether in a light-hearted comedy or a tragic western, unveiled depths that viewers found compelling. However, the desired breakout part remained just out of reach for both Buddy and Nancy. Each had made a lasting impression on Hollywood by the early 1960s. Buddy's charming, multifaceted characters and Nancy's incisive, humorous depictions had won them respect and admiration. However, neither had discovered the one part that would make them famous and define their careers. But that moment was only a few minutes away. Everything changed for them both in 1962 because of a strange, unexpected comedy series that would win over millions of Americans. In addition to changing their lives, that sitcom, The Beverly Hillbillies, would go on to become a cultural icon. The Beverly Hillbillies television series, when a modest Ozarks farm family became wealthy and relocated to the opulence of Beverly Hills, it was more than simply a change of pace. It marked the start of a revolution in television. Millions of people were instantly captivated by the eccentric Clampetts-themed television program, The Beverly Hillbillies. When it made its debut in 1962, a rustic family pushed into the opulent world of the Beverly Hills elite was the novel's intriguing, humorous, and endearing concept. Viewers quickly fell in love with the characters, who made several mistakes while attempting to adapt to their new affluent lives. Buddy Ebsen's portrayal of the patriarch, Jed Clampett, was important to the series. Jed's position requires a careful balancing act. He needed to be modest but intelligent. A man of few words but always with a strong sense of morality, he is kind yet forceful. The job was ideal for Buddy Ebsen, who is well known for playing parent figures. He established himself as the pillar of the Clampett family with his easygoing manner and air of wisdom. Jed was the knowledgeable and trustworthy patriarch who made choices based on common sense, even though he had no formal education. It was an easy persona to support since it seemed genuine and approachable. His catchphrase, "Well, dogs," became recognizable and came to represent his laid-back and kind outlook on life. However, Buddy Ebsen's contribution was just one aspect of the magic. Nancy Culp as Miss Jane Hathaway, the shrewd and practical secretary for the Clampett family's banker, Mr. Drysdale. Miss Jane may have appeared to be simply another office worker at first, but she was much more complex than that. She was intelligent, trustworthy, and most importantly, devoted. Miss Jane had a great affection for the Clampetts, particularly Jethro, Jed's awkward nephew. She was a memorable figure because of her unwavering support for the family and many confrontations with her avaricious boss. It was difficult not to fall in love with Nancy Culp's depiction of Miss Jane since it was so endearing, witty and humorous. Culp received an Emmy nomination for the performance because it was so captivating. What is unique about the Beverly Hillbillies wasn't only the amusing idea, it was also the Clampett family dynamics and the performers' chemistry. Granny caused difficulties with her wild and erratic conduct, whereas Jed kept the family together with his firm hand. Jethro, the foolish nephew, caused unending mayhem with his crazy ideas, while Ellie Mae, the lovely and kind daughter, enchanted everyone with her charm. The genius of the sitcom was in the way these disparate characters merged to create the dysfunctional yet lovable Clampetts. The Clampetts' simplicity made them strangely accessible in a world that seemed to be becoming more and more sophisticated and complex. Even though they didn't belong in Beverly Hills, audiences found them intriguing because their hearts were in the right place. The audience responded favorably to the show's fish-out-of-water humor. There were many miscommunications and amusing moments as a result of their modest ways colliding with the opulent Beverly Hills lifestyle. The Beverly Hillbillies' deft handling of the gap between riches and simplicity was what added to their allure. Despite their newfound wealth, the Clampetts maintained their morals and principles that had made them unique in the Ozarks. The Clampetts were a welcome change in a world when everyone else seemed to be preoccupied with wealth and prestige. Sincere, kind, and unmoved by the flimsy gimmicks of celebrity. However, conflicts were seething under the surface as the program rose to become a cultural phenomenon. Although Buddy Ebsen and Nancy Culp had a close working connection on film, their relationship off-screen started to deteriorate. There was a slight but noticeable tension between them because of their different personalities and the demands of their roles. There were sometimes arguments since each performer approached their work differently. However, the conflict wasn't limited to their professional disagreements. Both the spectators and the environment around them were evolving. The Beverly Hillbillies had already established themselves as a mainstay of popular culture by the time they were canceled in 1971. The show often drew up to 60 million people and was among the top-rated television programs, despite the criticism of reviewers. However, the network's abrupt demise was caused by a change in programming objectives and a rising distaste for shows with a rural demographic. Furthermore, even though the Beverly Hillbillies are no longer broadcast, their influence on popular culture and television is still indisputable. However, what led to the last eruption of stress behind the scenes, and what impact did it have on the popular show? Keep reading because there will be an unbelievable twist in the upcoming chapter. The reality behind the camera, behind the scenes of the cherished classic The Beverly Hillbillies, a complicated relationship developed between Nancy Culp and Buddy Ebsen, two of the show's main stars. Their on-screen personas, Jed Clampett and Miss Jane Hathaway, had a cordial and amiable relationship, but there may have been greater harmony in the reality behind the camera. Their expertise or acting abilities were not the source of their conflict. It was deeply ingrained in their diametrically opposed personalities and worldviews. A fervent political conservative, Buddy Ebsen was not afraid to voice his thoughts. The liberal worldview of Nancy Culp, on the other hand, frequently conflicted with Ebsen's. This was a fundamental difference in their worldview, not merely a question of conflicting political opinions. Imagine collaborating with someone on a daily basis, someone whose thoughts and beliefs are completely different from your own. Nancy and Buddy had this difficulty each time they arrived on the site. Other cast members claimed that Nancy and Buddy's tension regularly turned into furious fights, which may last for weeks at a time. There was nothing amicable about their relationship. It was characterized by heated, important discussions. Nancy, who was renowned for her keen intelligence and uncompromising character, frequently found herself in heated arguments with Buddy, who, in spite of his appeal, was remarkably inflexible and unable to make concessions. Their disparate dispositions fostered an atmosphere that was ready for fireworks. Both actors maintained their professionalism and concentrated on their roles, and the success of the performance in spite of these conflicts. After all, The Beverly Hillbillies was a cultural phenomenon that dominated television ratings for a while, drawing millions of people each week. Audiences fell in love with their characters. Jed Clampett, the dependable father leading his family through the follies of Beverly Hills, and Miss Jane Hathaway, the practical, hard-working secretary with a soft place for Jethro. Although it made people chuckle, Miss Jane's endearing and occasionally humorous fondness for Jethro also brought a sincere sense of warmth to the performance. Being the cool-headed person at the heart of the Clampett family, Jed came to symbolize stoic wisdom in the face of absurd circumstances. There was a noticeable difference between Nancy and Buddy's on-screen personas and their underlying tension off-screen. Millions were enchanted by their on-screen connection, but there was no denying the difficulties off-screen. Nancy and Buddy would frequently dispute for weeks over their divergent opinions, according to a comment made by Donna Douglas, who played Ellie Mae. As the performers spent endless hours on screen together, one can only picture the tension and discomfort that must have persisted behind the scenes. Despite these obstacles, Nancy and Buddy's professionalism won out, and the flow of the concert kept going. The simmering undercurrents of irritation that periodically flashed between the two protagonists were blissfully invisible to the spectator. It is impossible to exaggerate the Beverly Hillbillies' success. It was one of the best-rated television programs for many years. Fans still reminisce about the Clampett family's exploits in Beverly Hills, and its impact may be seen in innumerable television shows today. The underlying conflict between Nancy and Buddy, however, persisted despite all of its success. According to several, the already challenging work climate got worse as the event went on. A feeling of discontent was evident despite their professional manner. An unexpected element was introduced to the production by their frequent disagreements, which were frequently about subjects unrelated to the play. Nevertheless, they were able to maintain good relations. The audience, enthralled by the Clampett's peculiarity and comic genius, was unaware of the change. Nancy and Buddy's adventure was far from ended when the series came to a close. Long after the last episode aired, their differences would still influence how they interacted. Even though the program was over, their unsolved conflicts did not go away after the credits rolled. But for Nancy Culp, the end of the Beverly Hillbillies signaled the beginning of a new era. Unexpectedly, Nancy started to turn her attention from performing to politics, a move that would pave the way for even more significant changes in her life. What, though, caused her to suddenly become interested in politics? Was there more going on here, or was it just a change of career? Nancy Culp's political venture. Nancy made the decision to go in a totally another direction, politics. After the cameras stopped filming, Nancy Culp took a remarkable turn in her life in 1984, when she bravely entered the political arena. She made the decision to run for office in the United States at the age of 62, years after her time as Miss Hathaway on the Beverly Hillbillies. Representatives House. She joined a world very different from the one she had experienced in Hollywood, when she was elected to represent Pennsylvania's 9th Congressional District as a Democrat. Nancy thought her life experiences, such as her time in the military and her support of education, could be used to make significant contributions to public service. After all, Ronald Reagan, her former co-star, had made a smooth shift from actor to politician. Why was she unable to? Nancy's choice was as bold as it was difficult, since her opponent, Bud Shuster, had previously served 6 terms and held considerable political clout. The 9th District was a firmly Republican stronghold. A lot of people doubted Nancy's ability to effectively transition from Hollywood to politics, but she didn't let that stop her. She started a grassroots campaign, meeting with people one-on-one, and sharing her ideas for bettering healthcare, education, and environmental preservation. She was driven and passionate, but the odds were still against her. Nancy didn't anticipate a betrayal from Buddy Ebsen, her old Beverly Hillbillies co-star, with whom she had previously shared the spotlight. Throughout their years on set, the two had a history of disagreements, but nothing had prepared Nancy for what was about to happen. Buddy offered to record a radio ad supporting her opponent, even though he has nothing to do with Pennsylvania or the race. Buddy called Nancy too liberal in the advertisement, and charged her with using her fame to influence voters. His acts caused a deep hurt. This was more than simply a work dispute for Nancy. It was intimate. She subsequently voiced her disappointment, saying, "I felt blindsided by Buddy's interference, and felt he had no right to get involved in a race that had nothing to do with me." She said that she would never have done the same to him, even if they had a history of conflict. The emotional toll of the betrayal was evident in her comments, which were delivered with both hurt and disappointment. The widespread airing of Buddy's advertisement increased popular mistrust in Nancy's campaign. Despite her heroic efforts, the advertisement exacerbated pre-existing skepticism, making it more difficult to win over voters in the mostly Republican district. Nancy ultimately lost by a significant amount, with more than 66% of the vote going to Bud Shuster. She never openly attributed her loss on Buddy, but there was no denying the pain his actions inflicted. She briefly left Pennsylvania in search of comfort, giving herself time to come to terms with the loss and gain perspective before going back to her normal life. At first, Buddy defended his actions, arguing that they were in line with his political beliefs, but even he started to feel the burden of remorse as the years went by. He apologized at the end of his life for the advertisement, and how his participation had affected their already shaky relationship. However, it was too late to undo the harm at that point. After the election, Nancy and Buddy hardly spoke to each other. Their once promising friendship was irreparably broken. Betrayal, personal sacrifice, and perseverance in the face of insurmountable challenges characterized Nancy's political career. She demonstrated the same tenacity that had seen her succeed in Hollywood and beyond by being prepared to venture outside of her comfort zone and stand up for what she believed in. But did her narrative come to an end with her political defeat, or did it serve as a prelude to a deeper legacy? What lessons about Nancy's life and character did her steadfast spirit finally impart to us? As we explore her last years and the legacy she left behind, stay tuned. The last years of Nancy Culp. Despite losing the 1984 congressional election, Nancy Culp refused to let her loss define her. She found comfort in living a more subdued, meaningful life away from the bright lights of Hollywood. She concentrated on her passions, which had always made her happy, with her usual tenacity, community, art and animals. Nancy split her time between Florida, California and Pennsylvania, where she found comfort. Every place gave her a feeling of community and served as a blank canvas for a fresh phase of her life. She was an artist in residence at Juniata College, a private liberal arts institution located in Huntington, Pennsylvania. She went on to teach acting. Her choice to become a teacher was one of the most significant choices she made throughout this time. Using her extensive educational background and life experiences, Nancy agreed to teach at Juniata College. For her, teaching was a vocation rather than just a job. She inspired innumerable pupils with lectures that went beyond textbooks, bringing to the classroom the same commitment she had shown to her acting career. Nancy had a lasting influence on young people by frequently sharing tales from her extraordinary life. Like her on-screen personas in humanitarian endeavors, she saw education as a means of giving back and influencing future generations. Nancy's dedication to service continued after that. She kept up her involvement with nonprofits, particularly United Cerebral Palsy and the Humane Society of the Desert. Her passion for animals was one of her defining characteristics, and she dedicated her life to assisting neighborhood animal shelters and promoting pet adoption. This kindness was ingrained in her nature and wasn't just a public front. Her commitment to rescuing animals was frequently praised by friends and neighbors as a reflection of her compassionate and caring personality. Nancy stayed in touch with her followers even as she aged. She chatted to fans who loved her as Miss Jane Hathaway on the Beverly Hillbillies and signed autographs at events. Her conversations with followers demonstrated her modesty and sincere gratitude for the ongoing support she has received. Nancy remained close friends with some of her co-stars even after leaving Hollywood. She had a really strong relationship with Raymond Bailey, who portrayed Mr. Drysdale. Their friendship persisted outside of the performance, which is uncommon in a field where relationships are sometimes short-lived. When Nancy received a cancer diagnosis in 1990, her life took a challenging turn. She handled the disease with the same bravery and poise that had characterized her life in the face of this heartbreaking news. She discussed her diagnosis openly and showed off her undying perseverance in an interview with Entertainment Tonight. She found strength in her passion of creation and service, and she persisted in participating in creative and community activities in spite of the difficulties. Nancy relocated to Palm Springs as her health deteriorated so she could live out her last days in peace and with the people she had embraced. Even as her health deteriorated, many who knew her at the time characterized her as an inspiration. Nancy's legacy went beyond her Hollywood celebrity when she died on February 3, 1991 at the age of 69. Westminster Presbyterian Cemetery in Mifflintown, Pennsylvania, a location that was particularly significant to her heritage, was where her ashes were interred. As colorful and complex as Nancy's life was, so too is her legacy. She is regarded as a pioneer who lived bravely and genuinely in defiance of social conventions. In addition to her well-known performance as Miss Jane Hathaway, it wasn't avoidance when she remained silent about rumors concerning her private life. It was a subdued declaration of her power and independence. She was later acknowledged as a person who embodied the qualities of genuineness and resiliency and helped the LGBTQ+ community get more understanding and acceptance. She shown a remarkable capacity for adaptation and success throughout her career, which included serving in the military, Hollywood, teaching, and activism. Nancy's life serves as a reminder that one's beneficial influence on the world, rather than celebrity or awards, is the actual measure of success. She established a legacy of generosity, tenacity, and steadfast devotion to her principles via her acting, teaching, and charity endeavors. More than Jed Clampett, Buddy Ebsen. Buddy Ebsen, meanwhile, took a different route, fusing his lifelong enthusiasm for the entertainment business with his interests outside of the screen. Ebsen's career continued after the Beverly Hillbillies ended in 1971, however it slowed down as he became older. He showed off his versatility by taking on a variety of roles in movies and television. His most well-known post-Hillbillies endeavor was the detective series Barnaby Jones, which aired from 1973 until 1980. Because of the success of the program, he continued to be well known for a number of years. But regardless of how many parts he performed, Buddy Ebsen was always inextricably linked to the legendary Jed Clampett. Jed has become a household name because to his catchy catchphrases and homegrown charm. Ebsen was Jed to the fans. Buddy seems unconcerned by this affiliation on the outside. He accepted the love that fans had for the role by going to events and doing interviews in which he reminisced about his time on the Beverly Hillbillies. On the other hand, it must have been bittersweet in private. Imagine committing your entire life to a diverse profession just to be remembered for a single role. Despite this difficulty, he handled it gracefully. He wrote a memoir in the late 1990s that provided insight into his time in Hollywood. His illustrious career was explored in the book, along with his notorious conflict with co-star Nancy Culp, who portrayed Miss Jane Hathaway on the Beverly Hillbillies. Their conflict, which was stoked by divergent personalities and strong beliefs, became a topic of discussion among fans and is still a mystery surrounded by conjecture. Buddy had a rich and satisfying life away from Hollywood. He was an accomplished sailor who found tranquility and independence at sea. In order to explore his creative side outside of performing, he also tried writing novels. These endeavors demonstrated a guy who was always looking for new ways to express himself and who refused to be constrained by his on-screen presence. Buddy's third marriage to Dorothy Knott provided him with stability and happiness in his personal life. The pair had a long and happy marriage, and Buddy was surrounded by family throughout his latter years. Buddy outlived many of his peers and signaled the end of an era by surviving to the remarkable age of 95 before passing away in 2003. But his legacy endures. His work's enduring appeal is demonstrated by the fact that fresh generations of viewers still find humor in the Beverly Hillbillies repeats. Throughout his life, Buddy Ebsen showed fortitude, inventiveness, and a strong bond with his followers. Did she despise Buddy Ebsen to her core? Please share your opinions in the comments section below, and remember to like and subscribe for more fascinating tales from the golden age of Hollywood.